city of Chicago, one cold, dark night, a blizzard was a-setting in. A little boy was a-selling newspapers on the corner as the people were passing by, trying to hurry home to their warm homes where they'd be in and out of the cold. And the little boy was so cold, and he wasn't selling very many papers. He walked up to a policeman and he said, "Mister, you wouldn't happen to know where a poor boy could find a warm place to sleep tonight, do you?" He said, "You see, I live in a box up around the corner there down the alley. Gets awful cold in there of a night. Sure would be nice to have a warm place to stay." The policeman looked down at the little boy and he said, "You go down the street to that big white house down yonder and you knock on the door. When they come to the door, you just say, 'John 3:16, and they'll let you in." So he did. He walked up the steps to the door and he knocked on the door, and a lady come to the door and he looked up and said, "John 3:16. And the lady said, "Come on in, son." She took him in and she set him down in a split-bottom rocker in front of a great big old fireplace. And then she went off. He sat there for a while and then he thought to himself, "John 3:16. I don't understand it, but it sure does make a cold boy warm." Later she came back and she asked him, said, "Are you hungry?" And he said, "Well, just a little. I haven't eaten in a couple of days, and I guess I could stand a little bit of food." So she took him into the kitchen and set him down to a table just full of nice food. He ate until he couldn't stand anymore. Then he thought to himself again, "John 3:16. Boy, I don't understand it, but it sure does make a hungry boy full." She took him off upstairs to a bathroom, a big old bathtub filled with warm water, and he sat there and he soaked for a while, and as he soaked he thought to himself, my, John 3:16. I don't understand it, but it sure does make a dirty boy clean. You know, I've not had a bath, I guess, in my whole life. The only bath I ever had was when I stood in front of the big old fire hydrant and they flushed him out. She came in and she got him and she took him in and tucked him into a big old feather bed and pulled the covers up around his neck and kissed him goodnight and turned out the lights. Lay there in the darkness, and as he looked out the window and snow coming down and it was so cold and dark outside, he thought to himself, my, John 3:16. I don't understand it, but it sure does make a tired boy rested. The next morning she come back up and took him back downstairs again to that same big table full of food. After he ate, she took him back into that same big old split-bottom rocker in front of the fireplace, and she took a big old Bible and she sat down in front of him. And she looked up at him and she said, "Do you understand John 3:16? He said, "No, ma'am, I don't. The first time I ever heard it was last night when the policeman told me to use it." So she opened the Bible to John 3:16 and she began to explain to him Jesus. And right there in front of that big old fireplace, he gave his heart and his life to Jesus. And he sat there and thought, my, John 3:16. I don't understand it, but it sure does make a lost boy saved. You know, I'll have to confess, I don't understand it either. How God would be willing to send his son to die for me, and how Jesus would agree to do such a thing. I don't understand it either, but you know, it sure does make this old lost person saved.